Hello everyone, and welcome back to Plantastic Research. So apparently I've made a mistake, and I've recorded the entire video without realizing that there was no audio. So I'm going to be just quickly reiterating what each slide means and how I presented them to each other. So I'm glad that you all have come to view the video, and thank you. And when I click off the video and each slide comes up, then I will give a quick explanation on what I talked about and discussed in each slide. So thank you for understanding. I did not mean for that to happen. All right, so let's see here. All right. We are going to go over and add also a quick introduction on what we're talking about. We're talking about presentation and presenting and how each different topic is presented within each of the topics. So if you're presenting a topic for maybe a science project or something like that, it's very important to keep in mind the different factors of when it comes to presenting a topic and understanding it. So our standard for today, our standard is a previous standard that I use, and it's to obtain and evaluate and communicate information. But I wanted to specifically talk about the communicating information part and how that is important when discussing a topic to maybe an audience, or if you're presenting it to maybe a class or something like that, how to go about doing it and why it's important for those factors to be kept in mind. And specifically, as you can see, I pointed to the communicate information. That's extremely important because it shows you how to introduce the topic and therefore allows your audience or reader, the person that is viewing your information, to understand where you're coming from, why is it important, what are the different things that you, what is the evidence that you're presenting, and things like that. So that's very important to keep in mind. Key terms. So the key terms that I wanted to do, and we will continue the key terms, presentation, and that's the process of communicating a topic to the audience. And that's very important because that is what's actually being done. You're presenting a process, or you're presenting the topic to the audience. Your posture. Keeping your posture in line is very important because you don't want to be, standing with your hands in your pocket and things like that. Just things to keep in mind while you're presenting your topic to the audience, especially if you're presenting, you want to keep your audience interested. So a lot of hand movements may help. And your escalation, the ability to escalate your voice, to make it louder for a lot of people to hear, because sometimes you speak in maybe smaller facilities, or you may talk in large proximities, and that it varies on how loud you want to talk and escalate your voice so that the rest of the audience or everyone in the audience is able to hear you. And you don't always have to over-escalate your voice and yell or things like that, but it's very important to keep in mind of how you escalate your voice and pass on the information, because sometimes you could be reading or things like that, and you want everybody to not only hear what you have to say, but you don't want it to be too loud or things like that. So escalation is very important, but also you don't want it to be too low either, because you want to make sure that everyone can hear and things like that. So yes, that is very important, especially for escalation. All right, we're going to move on to the next one. What is a presentation? The first thing that it's important to understand is introducing a topic. So when you're introducing the topic, you're introducing yourself, and you're giving the introduction, and you're giving why is this important? What are we discussing? And how does it correlate with maybe a topic that you're maybe going over in class, or a topic that you may be going over in general, maybe some research that you've been going over, and things like that. So that's very important to introduce your topic. You're supporting. These are supporting things that allow you to give background information on maybe what you're doing, what supports the details that you're giving, how does it correlate to the topic, what are some important things to keep in mind when reviewing the topic and going over the topic. That's very important to understand and realize. Viewing evidence. This is very important. I provided a lot of pictures in my or try to provide at least one or two in the presentation and that I'm presenting the video from, because it allows for everyone to it allows for me to show you guys a visualization of what the topic is actually about. And it's very important, especially in science, because a lot of people have not maybe seen a lot of the things that are being discussed. Describing evidence. evidence, when you describe your evidence, you want to basically, describe the picture. Now, specifically in this case, I'm just giving an example of what the evidence, what a presentation would look like. You see the man standing next to the podium, and he's showing the audience, and he's facing the audience, and things like that. Comparing and contrasting. Comparing and contrasting is not always used in presentations, but it's good to compare information and defer information from different things, because it gives the audience an overall generalization of what the person or the reader is talking about, and that's very important to keep in mind, especially when discussing certain topics. And one of the most important things, which are questions. Questions are so important. I always encourage anyone to ask questions after they've presented a presentation, because it allows the audience to reiterate some of the things that they may have learned, or some of the things that you've maybe gone over with the audience while you are presenting your topic. And questions give so much variety and so much extra information that a lot of the times have not been presented in the actual presentation itself. So it's really important to go over questions with your audience. And I cannot stress enough that sometimes questions even help you reiterate some of the things that you may have went over but have forgotten to talk about, or just small key points that you've missed out on while presenting your information. So that's why I think questions are always extremely important. And it's okay if you're not able to answer every single question, but sometimes the audience will probably ask questions that correlate specifically with specific things, especially because sometimes they are newly introduced to the topic that you were discussing. So that's why questions are extremely important when you're presenting a topic. And sometimes rhetorical questions as well, which are questions that you generally bring up. And those can be important as well, especially when discussing your topic. Let's move on. How to present. First thing you want to do is you want to address the audience. And addressing the audience simply means to discuss what you're going to be presenting to them, or you want to maybe give yourself and introduce yourself. But sometimes that's sometimes people just go right into the topic that they're just talking about, and it's perfectly fine. Speaking. Speaking has a lot that correlates with escalating. You want to escalate your voice. Sometimes if you're a naturally loud talker, you may want to calm your voice down. I guess it really does not matter. It just depends on if you're able to fill the room with your specific topic, and if everyone in the room can hear you. This is where microphones come into play. But sometimes if you're presenting to the class, you may not have a microphone. You want to make sure that depending on how many people are in your class, you want to kind of escalate your voice. Also, expressing the information. This is literally presenting the information to the class. It's I know a lot of times that people read over their presentation, or they have bullet points, as I do below. And sometimes it's okay to read over. It's okay to look over it, but it's really important to know that you're trying to connect with the audience, and you're trying to express it to them, and you're not reading to the board. So sitting and reading to the board the entire time really doesn't help. I think it kind of just as if you were just following along in the audience, but you want to try to give the audience that ability to connect with what you're saying. Do they understand where was your point of view that it was coming from? And just reading, oh, I did this, or things like that, aren't always the best way to present, because you want the audience to kind of connect with you and what your experiences were, or what research you did, because they may have not done the same research or have been presented to the same research that you may have been presented to. Things to remember. Messing up is perfectly fine. If you mess up, that's fine. It's okay to mess up. That's why it's okay to read over sometimes. Maybe you have to go back and reiterate something, or say, excuse me, hi, let's reiterate this. Forgetting. It's okay to forget as well. If forgetting and messing up are pretty one and the same. If you forget something, you can always read over it, or you can, look back at what your information is, and your speed of talking. Now, I know I clearly can't say much about the speed of talking, but you want to make sure that you pronounce your words. That's specifically what I'm talking about here. Pronouncing your words. Don't use words that you and if you are using big words, let's say in your presentation, or you have words that you may not have used before, it's really important to look them up and kind of have them sounded out before you present. That way you have a great way of going over how you wanted it to sound and things like that. And it's very important, when it comes to presenting your topic, because it really gives the audience an ability to understand what you're saying and things like that. So that's very important. What have you learned? So we've learned about what presentation is all about, how to present to maybe big or small audiences and things like that, and the important things to remember specifically when going over topics with your audience. Now, every topic can be presented in different ways, specifically how the topic is being presented. Sometimes you're in a group, sometimes you're not. So depending on that, you always want to make sure that you present the best way that you can, and that's one of the key things to know. So I thank all of you for coming to Plantastic Research, and I hope you have a great day, and I'll hope to see you all next week. Thank you.